Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sara Pantuliano. I am the Chief Executive here at ODI, and it's an absolute honor to host this important discussion that marks 25 years since Kosovo liberation. So should I say Kosovo, as I always hear you call the country. This is a really critical, important milestone, and it is giving us a unique opportunity to reflect on Kosovo's remarkable journey since independence and think and dig a bit deeper into the country's aspirations for the future. So 25 years ago, Kosovo emerged from the devastation of the war and embarked onto a pathway, a new pathway for self-determination. And so it is in that spirit that we want to have this conversation today, one of remembrance and reflection, but also celebration and hope for the future. And please put your mobiles on silent. So Kosovo has made incredible progress in the past 25 years, and that would have not been possible had it not had visionary, strong leaders that really accompanied this progress. And we are really honored, really privileged today to be joined by one such leader that has been instrumental in shaping Kosovo's journey. And so please join me in a warm welcome for His Excellency Albin Kurti, the Prime Minister of the Republic of Kosovo. Prime Minister Kurti, thank you so much for being with us today. As I said, this is really a unique opportunity for us to hear your reflections on the journey that Kosovo has been on, and to think, about the future and to hear, about your aspirations for the country. So we will spend the first 30, 40 minutes. I will ask you a few questions to really hear different aspects of this incredible journey that Kosovo has been on over the past 25 years. And then I will give you an opportunity to ask questions to the Prime Minister and also our online audience. If you following online, you can put questions in the chat, and I will select a few once we get to the second part of the conversation. But with that, and then, of course, for those who are here, we will carry on next door over a glass of juice or wine, depending on your preferences, and we'll have an opportunity to network next door. But let's get started. It's really a pleasure to have you at ODI, and it's an honor to really have the possibility to reflect on this incredible journey that I was referring to. The transition from conflict to democracy has had a few challenges. It's not been easy. It's not been an even pathway. But Kosovo stands strong today. It's a remarkable story. It's achieved a lot through perseverance and through international cooperation. And it would be really, really important for all of us to hear your own reflections on what has made this journey possible, what has been achieved over these 25 years.
Thank you very much, Sara, for having me. The esteemed ODI Global Think Tank. We are marking 25 years of liberation of Kosovo in 3 weeks' time. And we look forward to host a lot of friends who helped us during these 25 years, and not only. First and foremost, US, UK, and EU, with liberation of our country, but then after with democratization and development. 1999 and 2000 were years of the return of refugees. In spring 1999, 860,000 Kosovar Albanians have been expelled from our country, and over 1 million were expelled from their homes. So they had to return. But there was no place to return, since 120,000 houses have been destroyed or burned down. And the first couple of years were the years of humanitarian aid and the rebuilding of the houses, where our diaspora played a great role. Census in Kosovo is about to show that at least every third Kosovar citizen is not Kosovar resident. We have enormous amount of our people. Every family has at least a member who is living or working, commuting between Western Europe, UK, US, and our country. It took a bit long until we declared independence. in 2008. Since back then there were talks for settlement with Serbia, mediated by UN Special Envoy, former Finnish President Martti Ahtisaari, who unfortunately passed away recently. And he tried, together with his right-hand man, Albert Rohan, an esteemed diplomat from Austria, to have an agreement between Pristina and Belgrade. Those were the status talks of 2005, 2007. Finally, it was him, in his report to back then Secretary General Kofi Annan, saying that the only viable solution is independence for Kosovo. But they called it supervised independence for an initial period. Back then, we did not know how many months or years it will take. And it took 4 years. Finally, in September 2012, International Steering Group, comprised of 25 Western democracies, said that Kosovo should be fully independent. And since 2012, we enjoy full independence as a democratic republic. But 2 years before that, in 2010, we got a positive ICJ advisory opinion, which said that declaration of independence of Kosovo from 17th of February 2008 did not violate international law, meaning that legal debate on declaration of independence is basically over. What happened among the people is even more interesting. We have young, dynamic population. Nowadays, average age of the population is 31 years. Everybody speaks English. Many of them speak German as well, because vast majority of our diaspora is in Germany and Switzerland. And they send remittances back home. For example, 20% of our GDP is remittances from diaspora. We have 27 direct flights per day, Pristina International Airport, Switzerland, during summer months. Therefore, our diaspora is vast, but also homesick. They keep coming back. I actually suspect that perhaps that's why they left. And they bring know-how and they bring investment, which is crucial for our progress. So there has been a lot of challenges. However, whoever comes back to Kosovo after 25 years is not able to recognize our country. Its economy has grown, everything has been rebuilt, and we never had slightest dilemma regarding our orientation and values. It's EU, NATO, Western democracies, human rights, political pluralism, rule of law, and no wonder that different international prestigious organizations like Freedom House, VDEM Institute, Varieties of Democracies Institute, Transparency International, Reporters Without Borders put Kosovo at the top of Western Balkan 6 in terms of democratic progress and freedom of the press and so on and so forth. So we are not a big country, but a great example that democratic progress and economic development go hand in hand, not one at the expense of the other. On the other hand, we are a great example that Western interventions, when they are value-based, they work well. NATO intervened 25 years ago to stop Milosevic's genocide, and it is a successful intervention. Therefore, I believe that democracies should help each other. There should be more solidarity among democracies. And Kosovo, as a great example of that solidarity, is important for the struggle of narratives in 21st century. which I believe at large extent could be defined in the years to come within this decade.
Thanks. I mean, you pointing to a number of the elements of progress that have been recognized, particularly when you talk about democracy, the freedom of press. A number of the advancements that Kosovo has made in that respect are recognized by a number of international organizations. But also economically, I think it'd be interesting to hear some of the progress that you've alluded to, but perhaps in more detail. Yeah. And you have spoken about the youth, who are clearly the engine of the nation's rebirth, but they're both a strength and a challenge, because obviously they also need employment. So can you reflect a little bit on this economic progress and the key factors behind and the remaining challenges?
Well, in these last 3 years, for example, we have had 6.2% of GDP economic growth on average, and we doubled exports, we doubled FDI. We have grown our economy 1 billion per year, whereas beforehand it took 3 years for 1 billion euros of economic growth. And what I'm particularly proud is we have increased tax revenues by 2/3 without changing fiscal policy. I guess that's because when people see that there is no corruption in the government whatsoever, they are more ready to pay taxes and contribute. Likewise, when they are optimistic, hopeful about the future, they rather spend than save, which is good for their lives and for the economy alike. We have increased employment by 20% in 3 years only. And likewise, we did not keep the growth of the economy for the state, but redistributed it for the society. We have introduced allowances for children and new mothers. We have made public education free of charge at every level, bachelor and master degree at universities as well. And what is one of the projects that we really look forward to get benefits from is vocational education and training, dual education system. And we learned this from our diaspora in Germany and Switzerland. They call it Ausbildung. Bridging skills gap by linking labor market with professional education. So far, we have included around 1,000 pupils who spent some days in a factory and some days at school, employing, so to speak, non-academic professionalism. And this is being already in place in 14 municipalities, in 23 schools, 12 different profiles. Because we have had too many diplomas without jobs in the market. And we want to make sure that in short to mid-term, for every diploma or certificate that you get at school, you will have a job in the market. We especially invested in youth and women. For example, we have brought in our governing program over 10,000 scholarships for students, and almost half of it is for STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths. And EU average of female students who study at STEM is 17%. In Kosovo is already 50%. 3 years in office, I have to single out as the greatest investment scholarship for female students. That pays better than anything else, besides being normatively just thing to do. We have also invested in agriculture by subsidizing our farmers. Then healthcare by increasing in 3 years 150% the budget allocation for the list of essential medicines. And then for military and defense due to aggressiveness of our northern neighbor. There are different social programs that we have employed, like super labor, which means that for 6 months, for all young women and men from 16 to 29, we give as a bonus minimum wage, wherever they are employed, for 6 months. Or governments for families, we make sure that there is no family without one properly employed member. Because we know employment is an individual phenomena, but poverty is very much a family thing. So we tackled both of these, and we have subsidized investment loans for small and medium enterprises.
It's clearly a very large, program of economic and social reforms, but that you're touching on. But there is one area you haven't mentioned that I know that is an important area for Kosovo, and is energy transition, because we've been, looking closely at ODI at some of the policies and interventions you're putting in place to guarantee a sustainable, and secure energy future for Kosovo. Can you elaborate on some of those?
I believe the 3 global challenges worldwide nowadays are social inequality, security threats, and climate change. I believe that we Social Democrats know best to answer all 3 in a holistic manner. Regarding climate change, we have done energy strategy 2022-2031. We're going to go aggressive with renewables, adding 1,200 megawatts of new capacity. To that end, we have already started with the first auction for solar park 100 megawatt, which has been successfully concluded. And all could see the online bidding of 6 prominent corporations from Europe and US. And the one which won ended up with a price of close to 49 euros per megawatt hour. Full transparency, efficient process, and now we are going to sign this contract with the corporation that won. 150 megawatts also for wind generated energy in this year. In contrast to the solar one, this is a non-specific site. And we have offered 15 years of power purchase agreement, 30 years of land lease agreement, and the ceiling price is 75 euros per megawatt hour. What was of a great help is Millennium Challenge Corporation, US agency, which brought us $202 million as a grant. Not a loan, a grant. $202 million from Millennium Challenge Corporation, which makes us #1 country in the world with battery capacity per capita. We are getting 170 megawatt capacity for 2 hours, 340 megawatt hour. And since we're going towards renewables, we need battery storage. And MCC was of a great help. We also finally got Fitch ratings because Kosovo was not getting any access to international forums in this regard. So now I think, and that was done with USAID, with our US and EU partners and with UK, we really want to focus on the renewables. One thing which hurts me is that there are cases when, for example, in spite of you wanting to have green policy and green energy, some of the producers complain because European markets are flooded by Chinese producers. And it's a bit sad to see that a factory which produces solar panels went bankrupt because it's not worth of producing solar panels, since there is this big superpower where there are no labor rights, no human rights, and you can buy very cheap solar panels. And we cannot offer any solution as Republic of Kosovo, but I hope that European Union in general, European continent needs a certain protection for its own producers who help combat the climate change.
That's a challenge that is not unique to Kosovo, but perhaps is outside the focus of today's discussion. Clearly, Kosovo has a lot of resources, and you're leveraging a number of them. But do you have any priorities around the areas and the sectors where you want to drive Kosovo's growth? And related to that, if you achieve the growth that you're after, how are you going to make sure that it's equally redistributed across Kosovo's young population?
Well, what we have been seeing going on already that we continue to support is sectors of export of our small and medium enterprises, namely leather, textile, wood and metal processing, but especially tech sector. Our youth is tech savvy, and we have around 1,500 prominent ICT companies with close to 20,000 good professionals, software engineers and developers, who are turning Kosovo into a already near future Estonia of Western Balkans. And we want to see more of this by having nearshoring and friendly shoring. When it comes to wood and metal processing or light manufacturing, we're doing very well with wood processing. For example, I know several companies in Kosovo which import raw material wood from Austria, and they export kitchens to Switzerland. Austria and Switzerland being two neighboring countries. Because there is know-how, electricity is quite cheap, but also renting of the premises is much cheaper than in Europe. The other thing is that we have to engage in some big infrastructural projects. We have 4 of them in mind, 2 with Montenegro, 1 with North Macedonia, and the other with Albania. With Montenegro, it's Pej Rojaj and Deçan Plav. Then with North Macedonia is the linkage between Prizren and Tetovo. And we need new railway between Pristina and Durrës in Albania. We have highway, we need railway. This railway would be linking future dry port of Pristina with future new port of Durrës. And yesterday, Foreign Secretary Lord Cameron was in Albania supporting this project. I'm very grateful for him supporting this project. But he had to cut his visits halfway through because
there was a sudden announcement here.
New elections have been announced in Britain.
Absolutely. You didn't touch on how you're going to redistribute the growth. It's a challenge that many countries have.
Well, as one Italian prime minister from the past, from the time that NATO intervened to save us, Massimo D'Alema, was saying in politics 3 relations are of crucial importance. The relation between capital and labor, the relation between center and periphery, and the relation between state and church. I believe that we are on the right track to have more infrastructural investment in rural area. So Kosovo, in contrast to some other countries, does not have a capital where half of the population is or 1/3 of the population. Actually, in the end, it might turn out that the population of Pristina is in between 20 to 25% of the overall population. So we need to decentralize the dwelling of the population in a country. On the other hand, what is needed is social justice. And social justice is comprised of two main elements. One is progressive taxation, and the other one is social insurance. So we are working hard on having health information system for health insurance. And once our economy eradicates gray zones, we have to embark on progressive taxation. We are doing well when it comes to fighting corruption and organized crime. So once this phase is fully accomplished, I believe that we should start a debate in our society for a progressive taxation, because those whose shoulders are wider, they should carry more weight of the burden. For example, we have closed 35 illegal pathways for smuggling that existed prior to our government. 27 of them being in the northern part of Kosovo. We had to close them unilaterally. Whereas there has been few illegal pathways also towards Montenegro and North Macedonia, but we could do it bilaterally with Podgorica and Skopje. On the other hand, we have been very harsh on fighting corruption within the institutions of the system. So close to 4,000 people who have been arrested for corruption, almost 10% were in one way or another working with the institutions or in the institutions. We cannot fight corruption if we do not develop an initial self-critique within the institution and concrete actions, because state officials are there to serve and not really to enjoy their functions. I say to all my fellow colleagues and activists from the parliament and government, we who are in politics, we should be middle class. Those who want to get rich, it's legitimate, but try your skills, knowledge, and luck in business, not in state institutions. So no millionaires and multimillionaires in state institutions. I think it might look a bit harsh to some.
Some countries may not.
It is very helpful for us.
Absolutely. The challenge of progressive taxation is a universal challenge, but good luck with that. You touched on how important the US, the UK, the Millennium MCC has been for Kosovo. And when we were in Davos in January, we talked a lot about the importance of international partnerships, the importance of the global international cooperation that Kosovo has benefited from. Can you reflect of what has been so instrumental in the progress of Kosovo in terms of the international support and including through either through instruments, through the multilateral development banks, but also what they can do going forward to continue to support Kosovo's development and your aspirations to join the EU?
Well, we got a great help in terms of both grants and loans, soft loans. For example, in February this year, I was in London. It's a meeting of EBRD with Madam President René Basso. We signed 400 million euros of memorandum of understanding with different projects. What we need support is to do more of the same, to be honest, in terms of good water supply, sewage system, then waste management, good roads, and these big infrastructural projects. If you look at Kosovo, it's like a plate turned upside down. 90% of water resources, sources of rivers, they leave the country. That's why we will need a couple of artificial lakes. And we also need a good irrigation system for agriculture. So this means billions of euros. We are going to invest as government as well, but we will need help from our international partners on both sides of the Atlantic. It's very hopeful that finally Madam President Ursula von der Leyen came with this idea for the region. 6 billion euros, half soft loans, half grants, for 6 countries of Western Balkans, which are still not integrated into EU, where Kosovo might get close to 1 billion. And on the other hand, President of European Council, Mr. Charles Michel, said 2030, the magic number for our region. And we look forward to develop our capacities to absorb these funds, and sooner rather than later to join both NATO and EU.
So you touched on NATO. Obviously, the geopolitics is one area that I cannot ask you about. Given the conflict in Ukraine, but also Gaza, quite frankly, and the moment that we are living geopolitically. Where do you see Kosovo and the Western Balkans situated in this wider landscape?
Kosovo, according to IRI, the Republican Institute, is at the top of Western Balkans in terms of orientation towards EU, NATO, and Western democracies in general. No wonder that all the countries of G7 recognize us. And unfortunately, none of the BRICS. 28 out of 32 NATO members recognize Kosovo, 22 out of 27 EU members. And we have done a lot of progress in these recent years. However, I believe that both NATO and EU are in a new phase where enlargement is not taboo anymore. Not only because of Finland and Sweden, but in general. And I think that this is the decade when we should be joining them. It's geopolitical, but it's also merit-based. Countries who work hard, who do their homework, should be acknowledged. I believe that if there wouldn't have been some of the geopolitical tensions, in a perfect, peaceful, and honest international order, Kosovo would be a front runner in Western Balkan 6. But this is not the case, because quite often, to progress in international forums, we are conditioned with normalizing relations with our northern neighbor, which is not a democracy. So for a social democrat to normalize relations with an autocrat in order to be acknowledged by European democrats, it's not an easy equation to solve. However, this doesn't mean that we will ever get second thoughts. I believe that EU and NATO in this century are even more important than in 20th century. Russia was traditionally anti-Western, but since their brutal aggression in Ukraine, they are anti-European as well. Their attitude is destructive in the sense that I think to them seems more important to see US and the democratic West fall down than to do something for themselves. Otherwise, one cannot explain all this aggression that they are doing. So it's bitterness and hatred rather than greed and ambition. So we have to be wary. We have to strengthen our democracies. But we need more solidarity and cooperation among our democratic countries, because autocrats are faster. They don't have to ask much. And on the other hand, they also are afraid of losing power, and that becomes a great energy for wrongdoings that they exercise upon others. So that's why I think it's time to understand that what we might miss these days could be huge opportunity cost for the future. solidarity among Western democracies. I would like to see it happening at a larger extent, but especially faster.
It's definitely a moment of reflection for a lot of democracies, thinking how we can work better together. I want to open to the audience, but I just want to ask you one last question. I've had a chance to observe over this last couple of years your style of leadership. You have a personal style of leadership that is quite different from a lot of other leaders. You seem to not prioritize your personal priorities or your party priorities, but always have the national interest, the interest of Kosovo, and try to find a way through the differences that you have in the politics of your country and possibly the region. What lessons can you share with us from your style of leadership? Does it work? Where does it where it doesn't?
I never saw politics as a career. I always saw it as a struggle. And now, as Prime Minister, I'm forced to see it as service as well. So, service and struggle, that's what politics should be about, not a career, really. I believe in professional careers, law, economics, engineering, finances, and so on and so forth. But politics should not be about career. That is my number one observation. Number two is important, how do you enter politics? Some people enter politics from a certain political party. Some, like myself, enter from students' movement or people's movement. Movements are usually in contrast to state. The contradiction between movement and state is as old as politics itself. So I think also this was, in a way, conditioning my thinking and doing in these 25 years. My entry point into politics was not a political party. That is one of the last stages. And the third element, which I believe is also important, is for me always, and for my friends with whom I got organized together, history was more important than finances. I know that it's not fair to make this stark contrast because one cannot do without the other. But if you see our deliberations in different forums of our organization, always we're much more preoccupied with history, in our case especially recent one, than with the financial world, so to speak. And it's a bit late after the financial crisis of 2008, when all of us, all of a sudden, had to read many books to update ourselves about the world which was coming or becoming.
Very good. Let me open to the audience here. So raise your hand. I'll try and take as many questions as we can, also online. There is a roving mic. I always like to start with a lady, so if you can get the mic there, Tegan for Jessica, and then I'll come to a few others.
Thank you very much for...
And can you please introduce yourself as you take the floor?
Yes, I'm Jessica Hagenzanker, and I'm Senior Research Fellow for Migration at ODI. Thank you very much for really inspiring speech and conversation. I work on migration, so I found it particularly interesting to also hear about the contributions of the diaspora to the development of the country, and also how you talk about the diaspora and really see them as part of the country and part of the population. So yeah, very inspiring. I found it really interesting also how you talked about aligning the education systems with Germany and Switzerland, or developing them along similar pathways. And of course, having a really young and very highly skilled population and already very well-established migration pathways to Switzerland and Germany, there's always the risk that you're going to lose people, especially if you align the education systems even better. So I was wondering what the kind of policies and partnerships are that you're putting in place to ensure there's more kind of brain mobility between the countries rather than kind of the standard brain drain.
Thanks. Yes, let me get a few. Jonathan here, and I'll come there.
Thank you very much indeed. And my name's Jonathan Charles. Congratulations, Prime Minister, on the progress that Kosovo has made. I remember being there in '99 as a BBC correspondent for the war and the liberation and covering that, and then subsequently many times, including in my EBRD career. But this is really the question, I think, that worries me. If I go to national capitals or you speak to officials, their understanding of Kosovo is not really up to date. And I wonder why that is and why that hampers then the ability of Kosovo to get a fair hearing. Because when you have these conversations with officials and ministers, they don't really understand all of the progress that Kosovo is making. And I just wonder how you see that and why you see that and why that's an issue.
Thank you. And gentleman here, there's Mike. Yep.
Hi there, Philippe Lefebvre, Labour Friends of Kosovo. Pleasure to be with you today. I had a question about China, which you briefly mentioned in your remarks. How do you view current Chinese investment in the Western Balkans, especially with the recent visit of Xi Jinping to the northern neighbour of Kosovo? Thank you.
Thank you. And let me take one online, and I'll come to you. This is from Carlos Gamito, ODI fellow. He says, thanks to His Excellency Albin Kurti for sharing these inspiring insights on how Kosovo has gone from a post-conflict country to a functional democracy with a promising economic outlook. My question is, what is the biggest challenge that Kosovo must address before accessing the EU, and what is the main benefit Kosovo would gain from joining the EU?
We have Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Diaspora, and the Deputy Minister there, Lisa Goshi, is for diaspora only. She works hard, and she has been analyzing different models of organizing diaspora. Armenian, Jewish, Greek, and I think she took most of elements from Irish diaspora. So it's very important to organize them well. Not by disrupting what they already do, but by building upon it and by offering government as a tool to do better and more. There are several waves of our diaspora, but it's interesting that all of them do come back. And now our greatest challenge will be something that Poland and Turkey already went through from their diaspora in Germany. When people retire, the last 2 decades of their lives, they go to their hometown. And we want to turn this into an economic factor. On the other hand, we are not like fixated or obsessed with brain drain. People will migrate. I don't think that we are human beings are meant to speak only one language or live in only one place, you know. So people will go back and forth. They will live in different places. So try to develop a model to this state of being, so to speak. Education is the most important, I must say, because it's important for the economy, but also for the fullness of life of individuals. And here is the greatest challenge, because it's difficult to know what functions best where and when. When I was a schoolboy, knowledge was linked with the teacher and books. That's not the case anymore. We have decentralization and diversification of the sources of knowledge. And in 21st century, even when you say we're going to introduce coding in elementary schools, it's already outdated. We have to keep the pace with AI and try to do our best according to our knowledge and abilities, by cooperating together. So I'm very curious and a bit anxious to see what will happen with education in the years to come. And out of this curiosity and anxiety, I keep close contact with our diaspora, because to be honest, they know better than us. And they bring experiences from different countries. Some of them are in UK, some of them are in Scandinavia, some of them are in US, some of them in Australia, or Germany and Switzerland. So through them, we get different experiences and try to integrate them in our society and economy. What is already going on in Kosovo is brain gain. A lot of young students or young professionals from Kosovo want to spend a year or two in our country. And we are working hard to welcome them. And that is not very easy because they have this comparative advantage when they join the market, labor market. And sometimes there is a bit of a resistance. I want to open media, academia, judiciary, and economy and state public institutions to diaspora. So just creating them opportunity is not an easy challenge, but I think we have no alternative. We must go for it. Our diaspora, which is not neither there nor here, they are both there and here, should be legalized, so to speak, and integrated. Jonathan, 25 years ago, you had only one rival for being maybe slightly more famous than you, and that was Jamie Shia, the NATO spokesperson. Everybody in Kosovo knows you very well. I believe that we have been too long associated with war and some of the scandals of corruption. And now we need to move out from that. However, the Russian aggression in Ukraine brought trauma back among the people, but at the same time decreased the attention of big capitals. Kosovo seems small, and people say, you know what, let's just keep it stable. We don't care much how just it is. We have war back in Europe, namely Ukraine. So the fear that there will be a spillover effect goes at the expense of acknowledgement and attention to us. Partially, I understand. Since Berlin Congress 1878, this war in Ukraine is the first war in Europe in which Balkans doesn't take place. So we never miss an opportunity to jump in. And I hope this stays as it is now. However, it is important to acknowledge the success and the progress of Kosovo. And politics of fear and some sort of appeasement, I think, must end, since it's obvious that Russian aggression is not ending. Regarding China, I would like best to expose my opinion in contrast of China with Russia. People's Republic of China with Russian Federation. Russia, in my view, wants to see the downfall of US and of Western democracies in general, but specifically of US. So their stance, goal, attitude is destructive in essential manner. Whereas China wants to become US. What US was in 20th century, especially second half of 20th century, they want to be in 21st century. Or what Britain was in 19th century. So this is what China is after. And due to this contrast, we also see some stark differences in the aftermath. Namely, Russian aggression united Europe with US and Europe within. We all wanted to join EU, but now EU wants to join NATO, as we have seen with Sweden and Finland. Whereas China has of its key objective to separate Europe from US and then to divide as much as possible within US and within EU. Because they want to become US. Whereas Russia wants to witness and experience the downfall of US, full of hatred and bitterness. There is a big difference, I have to say. And in this light, I see the visit of Chinese president to Belgrade. Yes, 25 years ago, by mistake, NATO bombed Chinese embassy in Belgrade. But NATO apologized for that. Errors happen in peace and at war. But you cannot now create an alternative narrative with a victimhood which is not real. And it hurts us because at that time, 10,000 unarmed Kosovo Albanian civilians were slaughtered, and no mention of that. 20,000 women have been raped, no mention of that. There was the Operation Horseshoe to exterminate entire nation, no mention of that. But my embassy was bombed, and I don't think it was a mistake. You know, this hurts. Nobody is denying that it shouldn't have happened. Bombing of Chinese embassy shouldn't have happened. But we cannot say now that since it shouldn't have happened, it happened deliberately. Because that goes against the concept of error as such. You know, errors happen. You cannot have a theory for every fact, so to speak. Things happen. There is such thing as error, there is such thing as coincidence in life.
There was the question online about what are the biggest challenges for Kosovo to access EU membership, and what do you think you stand to gain in particular from EU membership?
We belong to European continent. Actually, Western Balkans, not only Kosovo, is Europe. EU is seeking to become Europe. EU is seeking to become what Western Balkans already is, Europe. And by inclusion of Western Balkans into EU, EU becomes Europe. So I think goal and destiny are the same. So we fully embrace this destiny of ours. According to numerous studies, EU accession depends very much so from the quality of public administration. Many people think that membership into EU depends on GDP per capita, or the judiciary, or the fight against corruption, or market rules and standards, and so on and so forth. Actually, it depends way more from the efficiency of public administration. So that is something that we want to refine and reform in order to shorten the time of EU accession. Our greatest challenge will be that there are certain member states, not many, few of them, sometimes even less, a couple or even less, who use consensus as a value, as veto power to block others. Consensus is a value, not to leave anyone behind, but not to give power to someone to hold back everyone. So this is what our worry is. The building block of EU is the state, member state. We are pro-consensus, but with a certain footnote. That consensus is because we put up front what we have in common, universality, and not allow consensus to degrade into veto power of a member state. If I'm not mistaken, when you want to join EU, they have to say 72 times yes to you until you become a member. I'm looking forward with the highest discipline and diligence and vigilance to answer thousands of questions once we get the questionnaire from European Commission. So I don't want to escape administrative work that needs to be done, but at the same time, EU, now that has expressed the desire to enlarge and reform, should make sure that consensus does not degrade into veto.
Very clear. We are pretty much at time. I know that there are others, but we really need to close. You can, carry on with the Prime Minister. Maybe I'll just put one last question from online because it's very current, and it's probably something we should have touched on anyway. We don't have a name. They didn't put their affiliation, but they ask, talking about the EU. The EU set you in the last weeks a new condition for membership to the Council of Europe. The Association of Serb Majority Municipalities. How will you handle that? Because it looks clear that Serbia is not interested in fulfilling their part of the agreement.
We have an agreement with Serbia, basic agreement from February last year. Integral part of it, its implementation annex from March last year. And this agreement between Kosovo and Serbia is not an excellent agreement, but it's an okay agreement. It's modeled upon Willy Brandt's Ostpolitik from 1972, live and let live, mutual de facto recognition, two Germanys. That's what Kosovo and Serbia have now. The problem is that it has been violated time and again by Belgrade, because first they said yes in order not to sign, and that now they regret for saying yes. Part of this agreement is Article 7, which says that Serbs in Kosovo should have self-management as a community. And I'm for that. In conjunction with Article 10, which says that all previous agreements which are valid and binding should be implemented, including Association of Serb Majority Municipalities. So we are not neglecting that we have this heritage from previous governments, but we see it as a part of a package. It cannot be pulled out from the package to become centerpiece as a matter of urgency. However, I have been heavily discussing with Madame Dora Bakoyani, Special Rapporteur from Council of Europe for Kosovo, and we came to this agreement that this will be a post-accession criteria. Kosovo fulfilled all the criteria in terms of rule of law, democracy, and human rights. And we won in Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe by 82%. The first time that Council of Europe has postponed its decision, in contrast to the decision of Parliamentary Assembly, happened this May. However, Kosovo cannot be blocked, but can be delayed. We are working hard with member states. To be honest, I was not expecting to do this for Council of Europe accession, because there you become a member with 2/3 majority. I'm not applying for EU and to negotiate in front of the gates of Brussels, but I'm doing this in Strasbourg. However, I think that next time around things will be fixed, and we are going to become the newest member of Council of Europe. I think this is a sort of a continental justice to have Russian Federation out and Republic of Kosovo in.
Very good. Prime Minister, thank you so much. You've been incredibly candid. You've given us a real insights into the journey of Kosovo, the challenges it had to overcome, the challenges it still has. to tackle. You have shared very openly your robust views on the sort of geopolitics of the region and beyond, which others, I'm sure, will find very interesting to engage with. But above all, the aspiration, the passion for what the future of Kosovo can be, clearly shines through your determination to see Kosovo succeed. I'm sure many people here would like to carry on talking to you, and so we'll move in a second next door for a reception. But I just want to thank everyone for being here today in the room, and also our online audience. There were a lot more questions that we couldn't get to. But above all, please, before we move next door, join me in thanking very much Albin Kurti, His Excellency Albin Kurti, the Prime Minister of the Republic of Kosovo. Thank you very much for being here.